My name is Sean, and I would like to welcome you all to the Stand Up News Live. Real news, really good. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to my co-anchor, David.
Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I love good news. For our first news story tonight, we're going to go back to Sean. He has a really good story about the environment in Brazil.
Yep, our top story tonight is good news for our wonderful planet. The Brazilian rainforest is one of the lungs of our Earth, helping to keep the air clean all over the world. Indigenous Brazilian leader Alexander Corrip won the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize in San Francisco for grassroots activism. The claim of ownership of her tribe was accepted, and she defended her ancestral territory against illegal mining and deforestation. Corp celebrated the victory, but was clear that this is only a step toward saving the planet. Thank you, David.
Great story, beautiful visuals. Thank you. Now let's go to Anya for a wonderful personal story from her personal archives. Anya, take it away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was actually a surprise for me. One of our fans found this story from 1981. I think it's the Pittsburgh Press. My parents at the time were teaching at Penn State University. Yeah, as you know, my mom is deaf and she taught sign language there. And someone found out that American Sign Language was my first language, and that, you know, this was before cell phones, right? And I had to do a lot of the interpreting for my mom, even at that young age. So someone sent in this story, and I'd love to share with you. So here was the headline. That's little old me. And it says, able to communicate in sign language as well as speech, Anya Prince 4 provides telephone answering service, relaying phone messages to her profoundly deaf mother, Elizabeth. She learned 2 languages at one time. Now, in the 80s, you know, people thought that being bilingual or teaching your child your native language would slow down their ability to learn English. Now experts have found that that is actually not the case, that it speeds up your ability to learn other languages. But at the time, people didn't know that. And I'll show you, there's a couple more images of, that was me. That's me signing dad, and that's me signing cute. I'm reading a story.
I can recognize you.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, David. Thank you, guys. And then there's one last one I'll show you. Thanks to the fan who sent this in. They were anonymous, but I really appreciated it. And then there's one last image here. So yeah, and basically, you know, the reporter asked me if my dolls knew sign language, and I said, yes, I taught them sign language. It's a sweet piece. So it was really touching because I didn't have a physical copy of this. And it was really a really nice surprise to get this in the mail. And happy early Mother's Day to my mama.
So great. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Cool.
You're welcome.
Now let's go to ace reporter Diane for a story about seaweed. Now, here's a spoiler alert. When it comes to my story later in the show, it's also about seaweed. So pay attention so you don't mix up her story with my story. Take it away, ace reporter Diane.
Thank you, David. It's a seaweed kind of night, I guess, here at SUN. Yeah. Here's a story that proves that we humans really have everything it takes to transform environmental challenges into positive and productive outcomes. So, David, let's talk about stinky seaweed. Sargassum seaweed in particular, which smells like rotten eggs, has been washing up on the Caribbean Pacific coast beaches in huge quantities for a number of years now. The Riviera Maya beaches along Mexico's coast are no exception. But here, a gardener, his name is Omar de Jesus Vasquez Sanchez, looked at the piles of seaweed as a gift and a business opportunity. So Omar has been steering the seaweed away from landfill and into a kiln where he makes blocks that are like adobe that pass regulation as a building material. I'm going to give you a show on that right now. Yeah.
Whoa.
There you go. And the United Nations Development Program has praised the endeavor as a stroke of brilliance, that's a quote, and a sustainable solution to a current environmental problem. I was really inspired by Omar's personal story, which is really at the heart of this whole Seaweed to Bricks project. Omar grew up in poverty, and he immigrated to the US as a child to become a day laborer. He eventually dropped out of school, sadly, and became a substance abuser. But he kept alive his memories of Mexico and his dreams of being a gardener back home, and he eventually moved back. Omar's time feeling unwanted as an addict and as an immigrant really gave him a unique perspective on the whole smelly seaweed situation. So many of us see people suffering with drug or alcohol addiction as problems for society, and we choose to look away. In an interview, Omar said when the seaweed started arriving, it created a similar reaction in him. He said that while everyone else was busy complaining, quote, I wanted to mold something good out of something everyone saw as bad. I'm just so touched by that. So first he created a cleanup crew that provided work for 300 families. And he quickly discovered that the sargassum, stinky poo, seaweed junk, could be used to make building blocks, which he's used to build structures all around the state. And he started a company to market them called Sarga Block. I'm going to show you another picture. How cool is that?
A seaweed house.
A seaweed, a stinky seaweed house. I don't think it really smells, actually after it's turned.
I wonder where is it?
But at any rate, yes. So he first, after the cleanup crew that provided work for about 300 families, from between 2021 and now, he's used up almost 6,000 tons of stinky stuff to fire blocks, which he's then used to build structures all over the state of Jalisco in Mexico. Yeah. And there are all kinds of naturally, I don't know if you knew this, David, and Sean, but there's actually all kinds of naturally occurring pollutants or burdens that could be used in construction.
That's amazing. Very educational, Diane.
Yeah, I think so. And the United Nations Development Program has shared Omar's vision of the future of the Caribbean sargassum problems, and they hope it will inspire others to act in similar ways.
Wow, do you know where that picture was? The location, of the photo that was earlier with the tree? It looked so unique.
Yeah, it was the Caribbean. It was Cancun specifically.
Oh, Cancun.
Yeah,
I recognize that. Have you been to Cancun?
I have not been to Cancun, but I'm going to share one more picture and then conclude this extra too long story. Thanks for moving me along, Sean. So the bottom line is that we humans have all of the knowledge and innate creativity to transform even the most daunting environmental problems. All we need is the will. And in that respect, Omar, who's shown here, is a shining example. Thank you.
Great story, Diane. Thank you. Very inspirational.
Yeah.
Now, let's go to Suzette for a story about reading.
Thank you, David. So some real good news. A couple in LA recognized the power of storytelling. Joe Blackstone and Jamie Mon began volunteering to read to elementary school teachers, primarily 4th and 5th graders, and they decided to create a foundation, J3 Foundation. Unfortunately, statistics show that 2/3 of 4th graders who cannot read proficiently end up in prison or on welfare. So this really drove them, right? Let's save the children. So by 2018, they had launched the J3 Cozy Reading Club, a 2-hour after-school program that is predominantly for 4th and 5th graders. It includes mindfulness exercises, outdoor activities, and a healthy snack. Well, their first year, they started with just 15 students in one Los Angeles classroom. And now by 2022, they have expanded to 17 schools in 4 districts with over 400 students. And 90% of those children are reading at a 95% increased level and reading for fun. So the bottom line is, look what this couple's done. What can we do? If you know any child, pick up a book, read them a story, help getting them to read from the get-go. We have got to change these statistics. And as we know, storytelling is where it's at. Thank you, David.
Very convincing, Suzette. You sold me. I'll be looking for a child to read to, maybe at the library.
Yay!
So, okay, now here's my story about seaweed and plastics. If you remember the movie The Graduate, and he blurted out, plastics, that's the future. Well, it wasn't all that rosy a future, it turned out. You know, recycling plastics is not easy. But here's a great story on that. The seaweed species from the Caribbean has been turned into a tough but fully compostable plastic wrap. The breakthrough comes from the University of Leeds in the UK, where a scientist and colleagues were looking to turn brown seaweed from Trinidad and Tobago into a biopolymer. The seaweed is made up of long chains of molecules similar to those found in conventional plastic. Mixing the seaweed with acid, salt, and some chemicals rendered it thicker and pliable. Then they turned it into sheets of film like normal plastic wrap. It held up to heat and didn't leach out any harmful chemicals when it was exposed to water. Best of all, when it was thrown into the compost bin, it completely biodegraded in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that's compared to existing so-called biodegradable plastics, which can take up to a year to break down. Now, there are still some practical problems to be solved before the material can be mass produced, but scientists are optimistic. Seaweed is ridiculously versatile, and countries around the world are testing it out as a material for all sorts of applications, as Diane's report pointed out.
Wow. Great job, David. I'm a seaweed.
Seaweed. Yes, it's the future.
Oh, okay. That's our show for tonight. My name is Sean from the Stand Up News Live. Real news, really good.
And I'm David. Thanks to the news sources that provided the stories for our reporters tonight.
Okay. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. See you all next time. Remember, be kind.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean.